thickness of my material. And how much will be?
600.
I can't hear.
540.
540, yeah? What do you say? 140, I will say the same because if it has 5 lines in between, I will say each one is 20 and it's on the second one, so 540. So that table is telling me that all this thickness of the granular material is going to be 540 millimeters. Easy, right? Okay, so that is going to be the thickness of all this material, but I also need to know how much is going to be the thickness of the base, the thickness of the upper subbase and the lower subbase, because usually we divide the subbase in two, in upper subbase and lower subbase, right? So I already know how much is the thickness of my total material. To know how much is the thickness of my base, what I need to do is to extend this pink line and touch the last line, which is going to be this one, and this one, it says up there, minimum thickness of base material. So if I just go up and touch the last one, I will be able to know how much is the minimum thickness of my base material. So how much will be?
This 200.
Kind about here, right? Yeah, I will say 180. So the thickness of this layer here is going to be 180. Agree? Easy? Super easy. Okay. Now we know how much is the thickness of the base. We need to know how much is the thickness of the upper subbase, and we need to know the thickness of the lower subbase. To do that, we need to follow some rules. So what rules do we need to follow? Check here. These rules. First rule. The base that we are going to put needs to be a material with a CBR of at least 80%. So that table is going to tell me that the minimum thickness is 180, but the material that we put in that layer has to be a material with a CBR of at least 80%. So this material needs to have a CBR bigger or equal than 80%. So that material is a good material or a bad material? A really good material. Then it says the subbase, the material that is immediately below the base needs to have a CBR of at least 30%. So the material that I'm going to put here, how much is going to be the CBR?
30. The 30% for 180.
Sorry?
The 80% of the 180.
No. So the 80% is the quality of the material.
Oh yeah.
Remember that when we said, like when we talk about gold, the 18 kilates, 24 kilates, that's the quality of the material. Doesn't mean that weight say that you're going to buy 18 or the thickness is 18. No, not related. So this thickness, we got it from the table, right? And this, we got it from the rules. So the rules are telling me the CBR has to be at least 80%. And the thickness has to be at least 180 that we got it from the table, right? Then it says, the material that is immediately below the base needs to have a CBR of 30%. So how much is the CBR of this layer? 30%. So this one is going to be CBR upper base CBR 30%, right? And how much is the thickness of this one? We don't know. We know that it's going to, that these two will sum up whatever is left for 540, right? But we don't know exactly what should we put to this one. Why we break down the lower, upper and lower subbase in two? Because the rule specifically says below the CBR of 80, we need to have a CBR of 30. But usually a CBR of 30% is quite good material, but we don't want to use all of that in the full pavement composition because maybe it could be very expensive. So the rule says, rule number 3, at a depth of 250 millimeters below the wearing surface, so from this point to the bottom, a material with a minimum CBR of 13% is required to inhibit deformation. So what does it mean? They say, okay, this pavement composition will work only if for the first 250 millimeters, the CBR is bigger than 13%. Make sense? So, if the first 250 millimeters if the first 250 millimeters, the CBR is bigger or equal than 13%, that pavement is going to work. That's the rule. So what we do in the construction or in practice is that we say, okay, we can use a CBR of 30% here as long as this plus this is equal to 150. And then we can use a CBR of 10% here, which is cheaper, and then my pavement is going to work. Make sense? Yes or no? Okay, again. So let's say that we go to the market. We go to a quarry, and we look at the quarry, and they say, okay, I have a type 1 material, and the properties are the following. CBR, 85%. Grading, type A. And I also have a type 2.2 with a CBR of 35%. And a grading, type B. And I have a type 2.3 with a CBR of 12%. And a grading, type C. An example. So I will say, okay, if those are the materials that I have, that I can buy, I will put this one on the base, right? Because they say base needs to have a CBR greater than 80%. So I'm going to put here a type 1 material. Then here, I'm going to put this one, because the rule says you need to have a CBR of at least 30% below the base. So I have to put the type 2.2. Down here, because I don't want to put all of that, the total thickness, because I could use I could say that this what is remaining, that I don't know how much is remaining. How much is 140 minus 180? 540 minus 180? 360. So, from here to here is 360. I could say, I'm going to do all of this of type 2.2. It's perfect. That pavement composition is going to work, it's perfect, it's good enough. But is the most economical one? Maybe not. So, because we are going to make kilometers and kilometers of road, and the standard says you just need a CBR bigger than 13% for the first 250 millimeters, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to look how much is missing to the 250 millimeters. 60, 70, right? 70 is missing. So I will say that I'm going to use 70 millimeters, 70 millimeters of the type 2.2, and then I'm going to use 290 millimeters of the type 2.3. Make sense? For everybody who was not paying attention. I can see that face in the back.
Quieren sacar una foto de su face.
Okay? So,
Por favor.
what we usually do is that we try to optimize. So what we are going to say is, okay, I'm going to do it at 70 millimeters here, and I'm going to make this one 210, and this one is going to be a cheaper material. Can I do that? Yes, I can perfectly do that. The only thing is that the last rule tells me, don't make layers less than 100. Because if you make layers less than 100, it's wasting time in the compaction, and then you have to do layers of 70. So it's too much time. You are going to do extra layers when you are doing your compaction. So the standard says the minimum thickness layer is going to be 100. So if it's 100, yes?
Yes.
3. I don't know.
Less,
I need calculator. 260.
260.
Okay, so that will be how it's going to work. So, and it's at 250, how much? How much is the CBR at 250 in this case?
More.
Okay, I'm using type 2, which has a CBR of 35, right? This one has a CBR of 85, and this one has a CBR of 12. At 250, how much is my CBR? 35, because I measured here, and 250 will be inside this layer, which has a CBR of 35%, right? Clear? Let's do another example. Can you give me your design traffic from your practice, please?
Sácale el violado.
Ya.
Ya le sacaste. Tengo que comprar el celular, se llama la cámara.
Ah, bueno, usted recibe esto.
Estoy igual. ¿Cuál es el que está pidiendo? Ah, que soy tráfico.
96,600.
Okay, 400.
Yo te fui con el
400.
496.
con esa segunda explicación.
600. 32.
Me toca el nombre. Ahí vamos, ahí vamos. Está ahí todo el ah, verdad. Que hay como que
Es como que por la misma regla te va dando las distancias.
Okay, that's the design traffic that he got. Whatever, if it's okay or it's not okay, doesn't matter. It's okay. So that's the design traffic, and now let's say that the CBR is going to be equal to 2%. So how much is this number in scientific?
4.4.
4.96 times 10 to the power of?
5.
Is everybody sure? Yes. 5. So 4.9 times 10 to the power of 5, that's our design traffic. So where should I put that number in this? In the first 4, in the second 4, or in the third 4?
The first one.
In the first 4. So I'm going to look for that table, and I'm going to move this line. 4.9 is almost 5.
Pues está muy bien
So
explicado.
I'm going to look, put it around here, kind of.
¿Qué? ¿Cuánto punto qué?
And then this line, I'm going to put it down here, and I'm going to extend it until here, and then I'm going to take this one and drop it down here. Yeah? Agree? Okay, so if that is my graph, how much should be the total thickness that I need to have for my total pavement composition?
500.
580. And how much is going to be the thickness of my base?
¿Qué? ¿Por qué 580?
Sí, luego no está bien.
Donde intersecta la línea, te vas adelante. 500.
Yeah.
Pero dice 500.
So, how much is going to be the thickness of my base?
Ya. Es que va hacia abajo.
120.
580.
Ah,
No, para arriba.
okay.
Okay?
100, yeah.
Kind of. We are going to do it, I'm going to do the example later, and then we'll use the equation to know the exact value. Because there is an equation that we can use to know the exact value. Okay, so this is going to be 120. Let's say, let's do two pavement compositions. I have material 1 is going to be a CBR of 80%. Material 2 has a CBR of 30%. Material 3 has a CBR of 15%. This is one pavement composition. And then I'm going to do another pavement composition in which material 1 has a CBR of 80%. Material 2 has a CBR of 30%. And material 3 has a CBR of 10%. Let's say. We are going to do two. One in the CBR is less than 13, in the other one the CBR is one is more than 13, and the other one is less than 13%, right? So if this is my pavement composition, how much is the thickness of my base? We just said 120. How much is the thickness of my upper sub-base?
Is 120 less. 280.
How much? 460 will be this total one, right? From here to here. How much will be this one? Only this one.
130.
130. Why?
Because it's 250 less 120.
So I'm going to do this one, 130. So how much will be this one? So 580 minus 250. 330? 230?
330.
230.
330.
330.
330.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. 120, 130, and 330. So the rule says, for this one needs to have a CBR of 80%. Does it have it? Yes. This one needs to have a CBR of 30%. Does I have it? Yes. This is M1, M2, M3. Then the other rule says, for the first 250 millimeters, the CBR has to be greater than 13%. Is that happening?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, what if I do this? What if I do that?
No.
Why not?
Because the last rule say about the 100 thickness.
The minimum thickness is 100, right? So I did this one 100. Can I do that? Yes. Can I do this one 100 and this one 360? Why yes?
They say 200.
The rule says
No sé.
Yes, that's the reason. So, how much is the CBR of this material? 15%. And the rule says The CBR at 250 has to be bigger than 13% to avoid deformation. Is this one bigger than 13%? Yes?
Yes.
So if I make this pavement composition like this one is going to work. Yes or yes? Okay. Then, next pavement composition. This time I have a CBR of 10%. So this one has to be 120. How much has to be this one and how much has to be this one? If the material that I have in the bottom has a CBR of 10%. I will not say. Has to be 130 because if I am 250, I'm standing here and my CBR is 30, so it's okay. And then the lower one is going to be 390? 330, yeah. 330, the one that we did it before. Yes or yes? Okay. Let's do another example. Can I have you design traffic?
Mine?
Yep.
99
So another example.
Aquí la que yo tengo es que poner completa esta en los 580.
So 99 million.
580 y viene.
And can you put that in
Pero
scientific?
bueno, ya dice menos 120 y 120. Entonces, menos 120. 170. Ay, ¿qué?
9.9 times 10 to the power of 7. Okay. So if that's my design graph,
580 menos 120, que es la primera que te están dando. Porque la otra se viene
so that
462. Eso te da
there is a
230.
negative. I can do the same.
Now,
Okay, let's say it's like this. That's her number. So if I put that one in scientific, it will be like this, right? And then the CBR, we are going to say that is 4%.
El 2%. No sé dónde se